What would happen to false witnesses under the law of Moses? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Deuteronomy on Walking Through the Bible.
His word, the glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, turn to Deuteronomy chapter 19. We're going to be reading from verses 14 to 20. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Deuteronomy 19, beginning of verse 14. You shall not remove your neighbor's landmark, which the men of old have set in your inheritance, which you will inherit in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess. One witness shall not rise against a man concerning any iniquity or any sin that he commits. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses the matter shall be established. If a false witness arises against any man to testify against him of wrongdoing, then both men in the controversy shall stand before the Lord, before the priests and the judges who serve in those days. And the judges shall make careful inquiry. And indeed, if the witness is a false witness, who has testified falsely against his brother, then you shall do to him as he thought to have done to his brother. So you shall put away the evil from among you. And those who remain shall hear and fear, and hereafter they shall not again commit such evil among you. Your eye shall not pity. Life shall be for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. In this chapter thus far, we've discussed the penalties for murder and manslaughter. If someone was guilty of murder, they were to be executed. No mercy was to be granted, for if man shed man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. God, however, showed some mercy towards manslayers, those who unintentionally killed another. To be sure, manslaughter still carried with it the possibility of the death penalty. However, if the manslayer could reach the city of refuge, he could remain there until the death of the high priest, and thus escape death himself. This would be similar to our modern jail, though the person in the city of refuge would have freedom of movement within the city boundaries. Coming now to verses 14 to 20, we move on to theft and lying. Verse 14 specifically deals with theft of land. When Israel inherited Canaan, boundaries were going to be set. It would start with boundaries for each tribe, but then move on to boundaries of houses, and then down to boundaries of individual families. These boundaries would be delineated by landmarks or markings that would identify the boundaries of someone's property. Today, we have fences to separate our land from our neighbor's land in most places, but once you leave the city, you might not have fences. However, there would still be landmarks to identify your property, even in the absence of fences, such as roads, streams, or posts in the ground. If someone moved another neighbor's landmark, they were in actuality stealing from their neighbor. And once the landmark was moved, it might be difficult to have it replaced, for proof would be needed to be obtained that the landmark was moved to begin with. We would have deeds today which we could produce, but none such existed in that day. This prohibition would be especially important for those who were poorer, for they are often taken advantage of by those in power and sometimes have less recourse in court because of their poverty. Such shouldn't have been the case in Israel, as the law of Moses taught that judges weren't to favor the rich or poor, but in practice we know that the poor are often disadvantaged in court. God despises theft, and as such warned Israel about the theft of land here. Another thing that God despises is lying, especially lying against someone in a court's proceedings. When it comes to what we might ordinarily call a lie, usually these things are told to keep us out of trouble. And society usually accepts them even though God does not, as long as somebody doesn't hurt somebody else. But as I said, God doesn't view any lies as acceptable, for all are sins that, if left unrepented of, can keep us out of heaven. When it comes to lies in court, though, not only could that have spiritual consequences, God told Moses here to tell Israel, here in Deuteronomy 19, that such would carry physical consequences as well. First, we need to realize that nobody could be convicted of any crime on the testimony of only one witness. They needed at least 2 witnesses, with the word witness here simply meaning evidence. If I said that my neighbor stole my axe, which had my name on it, and then my axe was found in my neighbor's possession, that would theoretically be enough evidence to convict my neighbor of theft under the law of Moses, assuming that no other evidence existed that would exonerate him. But what would happen if I hated my neighbor, took my axe, placed it on his property, and then went to the authorities and said that my neighbor stole it? That would make me a false witness, a liar. And under the law of Moses, false witnesses were dealt with harshly. In the case where someone is being accused of being a false witness, both people in the controversy would stand before the priests and judge of the Lord in the tabernacle, like we saw in chapter 17. And they would make inquiry and render final judgment. If I was found to be truthful, the other person would be convicted. However, if I was found to be a false witness, then I would be found guilty and receive whatever punishment that was coming to my neighbor had they been convicted. If that penalty was the death penalty, then that's what I would receive. Such a harsh penalty not only shows us God's disdain for false witnesses, but it also would provide those in Israel a strong deterrent against lying against their neighbor. Imagine today if those who perjure themselves in either civil or criminal court were dealt with this way. It would lead to a lot less lying and probably a lot fewer frivolous cases. To be clear, though, verse 21 of Deuteronomy 19 is not promoting vengeance, as Jesus had to correct in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5. The context is in judicial proceedings. God did not allow vengeance in Israel, but justice to be served by those entrusted with serving it. A reminder for us today. With that, our time is up for today. Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Deuteronomy chapter 20, verses 1 to 9, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.